And it's such an opportunity because I think both parties have betrayed Illinoisans for a long time, and there's just not a representative way forward, I think, to rebuild trust, like through representation in the elections right now, without major election reform that isn't going to happen without a major independent movement for reform. And that's a nonpartisan city charter, that's civic assemblies, that's ranked choice voting, that's open primaries, it's all the work that we could do.
Welcome, my people, to the Double V podcast, From War to Activism. And today, I have a special guest, civic organizer, data scientist, Marine Corps veteran. She could do it all. Holly Burd. But before I get to her, I have to talk to you people. I have to get this off my chest. It's the Chicago Bears. And this Chicago Bears, where they're going to move to, where they're not going to move to. Well, let me tell you, Chicago Bears fan, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to Indiana. Okay? They're not. All right. Father Daley dealt with this. Old man, baby Daley dealt with this. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to Hammond, Indiana. There's nothing out there in Hammond. At most, they'll probably go to Arlington. So stop going crazy about the Chicago Bears moving to Indiana, Chicago Bears fans. Don't worry about it. And also, if they go, so what? Our children's education is more important. And we know why they're trying to get, the franchise is trying to get the best deal. They don't want to pay subsidies. But they're not going anywhere. This has been going on. And I remember Father Daley reading about it. He said, if the franchise wants to go to Indiana, well, let them go to Indiana. They'll still be called the Chicago Bears. So stop it already. Stop it. They will be in Illinois at least. So anyways, let's I'm getting to my guest right here, Holly. How you doing, Holly?
Hi, Charles. Thank you for having me.
Yep. I'm excited to have you. And so go ahead, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, I don't think of myself too much as a civic organizer as much as a civic activist, I think. I really I focus most of my work on nonpartisan reform. Right now in Chicago, we don't have a city charter, and every major city has one. There's a lot of reasons we don't have one. And I focus on the possibilities of if we do get one. And I try to invite veterans specifically to get involved in policy activism, using our veteran voice to affect especially democratic reform. So nonpartisan election reform, stuff that to me lines up with the oath we took to defend our democracy. And so that's what I focus a lot of my resistance and my work on. So I try to think of myself as a civic activist, like I said.
Okay. I was gonna say civil activist, but I just wanted to sound a little more professional,
Yes.
So can you tell us, you were in the Marine Corps, right?
Yes, I was a Marine from 2006 to 2011. I went to Iraq as a linguist and Afghanistan as a linguist. So I did that stuff. And then really after I got out, I contracted for a couple of years. I was just young and I didn't really know. I grew up in Peoria, Illinois. When I joined the Marine Corps, it was
Okay.
to pay for school. I worked at a tanning salon next door to the recruiting office. Like that's how I found the Marine Corps.
So
And yeah, it was transformative. I learned a ton. But I don't think the lens I look at war through now, and as a veteran, what I think of democracy as everything is just so different than 20 years ago when I enlisted, right? So it's yeah. Um,
Wow, wow. So shout out to Peoria, the Peoria folks. You know, we got we got your person here, Holly. So that's awesome.
a
And
person, I
yeah,
love it. I
person,
don't get that a lot. Yeah.
your hometown person right here. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. So the recruiter's office was right next door. Okay, and so you didn't go straight into out of high school. You worked for a little
I
bit.
I did. I had a year where I went to St. Louis University and basically failed out of school. I had no idea how to do school. I was, a
Hmm.
first generation student, and my single mom didn't go to, it was a very, I didn't know how to go to college. And so the Marine Corps was a very lucky thing for someone like me, and especially to become a linguist. I really just I did well on a couple of tests, and they sent me to Arabic to learn Arabic. And I literally had only heard of like Arabic from the movie Aladdin, I think,
Okay.
like, which is really embarrassing, right? So I had no idea what I was doing when I was 19 and became an Arabic linguist. But yeah, I mean, transformative, obviously, opportunity that I'd be a totally different human had I not uh done that, right?
That's awesome. But let's give a shout out to single parent mothers. My mom was a single parent, so let's give a shout out to them. They don't get enough credit and
Never.
stuff. So and single parents in general. So what got you into activism? What kind of organizations you're part of?
I started after the last Trump election. I think I felt like other veterans who maybe saw what was happening. I actually wasn't very active in politics except for the major elections. And I started to feel like differently about where I fit into that equation. I kind of thought, "Oh, I'm not smart enough to figure all this out if, there's smarter people than me to navigate these like really complex election systems and fight these systems, and they're fighting them." And I think after the election that time I realized maybe they need more people to be fighting for some justice in these election systems and figuring out how we can do better. So I was in school at DePaul as a data science student,
Hmm.
and I just started using the opportunity to do my projects on local. What I saw happen, I was trying to act locally. I tried to just hyper focus. That was December of 2024, and the budget was a big deal at City Hall. So I started watching the city council meetings and looking at the budget as a data science student and trying to see what's going on at City Hall that's preventing. What's the narrative here? What's the data say? What's the narrative? Why can't we figure out where $17 billion is gone? And like really, really wanted to see what that meant, as a Chicagoan who, wished I understood what the elections and how everything ran. Like at the time, I genuinely had no idea. I was just like,
Hmm.
they've gotta be there's got to be smart people in here working on this. Like they've yeah, so I just started paying a lot of attention after the election. And further on, I think by March I found out we didn't have a city charter. And I met with Alderman Villegas, who's also a veteran. And he is one of 3 veterans in the Chicago City Council. And I was able to talk to him about the city charter as nonpartisan reform, as a constitutional type reform that, would resonate with veterans. And he told me to build momentum, and that was March of 2025. No, yeah, 2025.
Hmm.
So I that's what I've been trying to do ever since, is build some momentum around that through different civic engagement opportunities. I also found a group of veteran reform, I would say activists, but they're really just veteran reformers who have been working in election spaces before that, called Veterans for All Voters, doing they have a national organization that works to get ranked choice voting and open primaries the same model that they have in Alaska, um, in for their elections, that they get that model in all 50 states. So they've been working on campaigns with veterans, leading them all
Mhm.
over the country, in different states with different rules and different. Really, both parties invested in slowing down the movement to empower independent voters more, and that's really I've really admired their mission, and I do a lot of work with them as well. So,
Oh, that's great, and, you know, you data scientists are very, very special. You guys always looking for it's always a question to a question to a question. It never ends and stuff. Matter of fact, I'm wearing a person that was a who is a data scientist who ran against in my ward, 39th against Samantha Nugent, which you guys chose the wrong person. Denali Disgupta is a really good friend of mine. She's a data scientist, and you guys talk like alike, you know, like non-speed, speed, and numbers and stuff. So, yeah, so you guys are very interesting and very special, and we definitely need you.
oh,
But
I love that
uh,
compliment. Yes.
yeah, but the wrong thing I can tell you right now is you should, yeah, maybe you just didn't know. Okay, it's you should have not gone to Vegas. You could have gone to somebody else. You know, I'm not going to go into that rabbit tunnel, that rabbit hole. And but let's just say he's pretty corporate. So, but you know, when you might be like I said, I think maybe we discussed this before. You're better off going to maybe the progressive, you know, more of the progressive city council members. But anyways, so, can you tell us, like, what is civic assembly? Because you know, people don't understand. You know, and that's the thing about these things too. People, it's like they just don't understand these things. You know, because they make them complicated for people just not to understand, right?
That's the key. I think that's a great place to start. When you understand that the whole thing can be understood more easily if we accept that it was designed to be confusing.
Mhm.
That's unfortunate. Like, but that does mean like and people like to bring up that quote, like, don't assume malice, where it could just be somebody just made a mistake and made that difficult, you know. Okay. But maybe. But at the same time, yeah, I look to other veterans like Viegas, and I do want to defend him in this way. There is an opportunity right now for us to step up in election reform and speak to our constitutional obligation to defend the Constitution, defend people's rights to vote, and to be active in these spaces, be vocal with as veterans, even if we disagree with war, for instance. So there's like a broad spectrum. I think what Eric Bronner, who founded Veterans for All Voters, he uses
Mhm.
this phrase, radically collaborative. We need to be radically collaborative as veterans, and I think Viegas has been that way with me, despite his corporatism or whatever, if you will. But politicians are in a system that isn't set up for them either, and I think that's the gap that veterans are uniquely positioned to build bridges over. And that's the one I found myself in, and my personality catered to, and just um my commitment to fairness and nonpartisanship. Those things are unique to me, but not really unique to veterans. And they feel like it's something we all sort of share and are really, really good at. And those gaps are everywhere right now between the institutions that are begging people to trust them and the politicians who are trying but stuck in these constant campaign cycles and these like
Mhm.
corporate traps that they also have to navigate and find some semblance of like peace with themselves, like they do,
Right.
they surely, all of them came from a place of, I do want to change something for good, right? But to encounter a reform minded person like me, who's born out of, a time of revolution and thoughtfulness and resistance, where my energy comes from, and it's brand new, and I'm like, fix this. And like, it's like, what are we? So it's a lot to collaborate with someone
Uh,
like me. And I think veterans are uniquely open-minded in that way. We've worked together for a mission across different diverse backgrounds, and we've also benefited from that. We've through different missions, like our background in the military. I know, and I've read about other veterans' experiences that through this, and it's something we see in, I think, activism circles too, where the diversity of people's backgrounds, if we're all sitting and collaborating, working on a problem, different, we could get stuff done faster. We just do. Like it's easy. Everyone has different strengths, right? We can separate, come back, and the mission is moving forward. And it's something you experience over and over, and you don't name it until it's not there. And then everyone's like, wait, oh, we're all like literally good at the same things. Like that's like, how are we gonna solve anything? I feel like I see that a lot in meetings nowadays sometimes when you have, like, a room full of white men solving these election problems.
yeah.
They're not ill-intentioned, they're ill-equipped. They only have they're all, like, coded for the same error, right? And so they aren't finding the solutions just because they're not even in the room where they could come from. Like, we're all a part of it. So, all this to say, through my experience with these politicians and noticing that gap and activating other veterans in these civic spaces, I found deliberative democracy, which is a term to call what I was just describing. You have a representative sample of people get together and talk about, or really any group of people, I guess deliberative democracy gets together and talks about it. Like I always imagine the Constitutional Convention.
Mhm.
All the founding fathers in there talking about their ideas, the immigrants, the rich landowners, the this, the that, the however it was then whoever got in that room, it was still a unique, diverse group of people for the time. And so it's to consider that, and that's how they came up with the Constitution. That's really where the idea of a deliberating, a group of regular people deliberating about the city charter, is where the idea of a civic assembly. I found a civic assembly, and I found out that they exist all over. And civic assembly is a jury, like a representative sample of people, like a jury, um, of like from a locality. So let's say it would be like 100 Chicagoans, of like the same representative makeup of Chicago, of age, race, and by like ward and location and renters and homeowners, different variables, right? So the makeup of the representation is like one that we could trust would collectively like be aware and be heard about their experiences, with regard to any sort of issue, and then they work together to solve that issue. Is that probably a lot of words I said? Getting
That's that data scientist people in her. So we that's good. It's a little confusing, but no, no, it's good. You explained it pretty well, and just like that. What was the movie that I saw that you showed at the Resistor? What's
Yes.
it called?
Yes, I'm so glad. There are brilliant people out here documenting in with
Oh,
so much beauty. There's a documentary called "Goodbye Politicians, Hello Democracy," and Adam Concrete. He made this documentary, and it follows on Zoom and through like talking heads with folks in Michigan. It's a 30 Michiganders, who get brought together through a civic assembly, by lottery. They're chosen, and then they meet, over, I think, 5 weeks and discuss COVID-19 policy as a group, and they come from all over Michigan. They have all different backgrounds. In fact, the movie featured 3 veterans, I believe, in that movie too, which was interesting. I was like, wow, that's fascinating that we're in this delegation of random
mm.
Michiganders. So it's a powerful witness of what these delegates go through as they deliberate and try to solve a problem with strangers at the beginning, right? But then it's like they're this cohesive problem solving unit of like wisdom. And that collective wisdom is like powerful. Like people cried, I think, at the screening, right?
I didn't cry. I had a lot of things I could have said, and I'm glad I wasn't part of that that civil assembly because just like, and that's what you're talking about, right? Where you get people together and they have like these different views and these
Mhm.
different ways of thinking. But I don't even think I would have made it through that civic symbol because I would have gave them a history lesson, right? You know what I'm saying? As me as a historian, and like especially like the part where the lady was talking about how she was talking about how like everything's like through natural, through vegetables and all this stuff, and it's like, well, like you have access to that, right? You know what I'm saying? Like where I'm from, an African American community, we don't have access to those things. We have food deserts and stuff like that. So that really bothered me. And then that white veteran, like the way he thinks, like there's a lot of things that I honestly probably I would have to come back, like the next session because I would have been so upset about a lot of things, right? And stuff. But that's the thing that you guys talk, you talk through it and stuff like that. But it's just, the mindset, and maybe that is a good thing for people to get together and stuff and talk about these things to, uh, to, um, to give them knowledge about things that they're not experienced to in the communities. But to me, honestly, I just feel like these people just don't care. You know what I'm saying? Even when you do put them together in a lot of cases and stuff like that. That's just how I feel personally, being part of the Black community and in general. So it was very interesting though to get all those people's ideals and stuff like that. I just had that more of a Black Panther mentality, you know what I'm saying? Kind of. So, which the Black Panthers did work with a lot of different groups too, so allies. But I just thought that that was very, very interesting. And, I wouldn't, let's just say I wouldn't have been too nice on, on, talking in that civic assembly and stuff like that. So, and I think, it's just, for me, it's the same old rhetoric that we hear all the time. And I think in ways, maybe some of these people just don't understand. But I think some of these people do understand. They believe that truly. You know what I'm saying? Like these same old dog whistle calls, like welfare, right? Well, what is welfare? That was started by Ronald Reagan, right? It's what welfare is black people, right? Like and it's just black people. And it's also media plays a big, big part in that, right? You know what I'm saying? Um, so it's nice, but it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? So I just really appreciate those people that participated in it because I'll be honest, after that first or two sessions, I would have been done with that. And I was like, I'm done with it. I got to work with my own community and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And do what I got to do in my community. So, but it's a good thing too, right? And stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm like so glad that you shared that experience with me because I think what's important about deliberative democracy is that we practice hearing each other past that knee jerk reaction. And I do this. I have a knee jerk reaction to a lot of stuff. And actually, in fact, like, yeah, everyone would, that would not surprise anyone watching this that knows me. They're like, yeah, everyone knows that about you, Holly. And I can get very defensive, especially I can get defensive about Veterans for All voters. I really appreciate their mission.
Yeah.
I get defensive about my work. I get defensive if someone but one thing I love about sortition and why I get so defensive about it maybe is to me, it's how we hear every single voice because
Hmm.
we all have different experiences. And I think experience it matters. It doesn't matter that, even that man's, any even a racist man's experience there who his he doesn't see himself racist, right? What he was saying. What was he saying again? You said the dog whistle was about welfare when he was talking.
Welfare and then the child
Yes,
care and all
I
that
remember what
stuff.
you're talking about.
Right.
Yes, and then the women started to try to negotiate with him,
Oh yeah.
and they were quite patient. Too patient, really, and I totally understand that take on that. I love one thing I love about these spaces, though, is the facilitation of these discussions past that, right?
Yeah.
And we got to see the people come back together and then go back up, like, come back together crying with each other about, "I really, wish I had communicated with more kindness." And how often have we felt that? When I know myself, I'm sharp. I'm sharp and I can be sharp when I'm when I'm witty and sharp and quick back. Sometimes it can feel very good, but sometimes it can feel like, oh, I just hurt someone for what? For a free what? And I feel like that was happening in those discussions where people are
Mhm.
just like, hey, wait, you have a problem to solve. And then you're walking away like, why am I so, maybe I could be a little softer about
Yeah.
this. Maybe I can see a little bit past some painful memories of my model of what happened here, and really entertain that this is painful for someone else for a totally different reason, and we still have a problem to solve. And I feel like that's what I witnessed in the movie, but I also got to see a civic assembly in person in Akron, Ohio in May, and it was the same. The delegates I met there were so empowered and transformed from getting heard by each other and hearing each other talk about housing. It was a housing reform one. And they had all had different backgrounds and experiences with nonprofits. Some of them had been unhoused before. Some of them, like, there was different moments in their lives that made them find these, like, join this random lottery to do housing policy with, as an Akronite, right? And so it was like this unifying thing, and it's called Unify Akron, actually, the nonprofit that facilitated it.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
nonprofit, that's really who I sort of been modeling, like, this idea of bringing this to Chicago is we have we have so many organizations of wonderful, powerful, radical thinkers out here in Chicago. I think we're the most organized city in the world. Like, everyone is a part of a group that they care about and would defend how I just want to get defensive about Veterans for All voters, how I want to get defensive about Veterans for Peace. My groups, I'll get defensive for them just like any activist or any policy thinker out here in the city. And there's dozens of people who are just like me, who are obsessed with something that they feel like would make things better. And I think the moment we have now is one that calls for us to connect those nodes, and really bring together the voices of every single person who's going to be wearing these policy shoes that I'm learning about this analogy that, like,
Mhm.
the one who wears the shoe who can tell you where it pinches. This is my friend. I've met so many wonderful professors and thoughtful, like, people who've been working on democracy reform for a long time, and he taught me this. Um, and he's with Sortition USA Chicago, and he taught me about the person who wears this shoe can tell you where it pinches. And I just keep thinking about that. The more and more and more voices, the more people we can get, that's the better we can figure out what this shoe factory is going to output.
Yeah.
And, like, it's such an opportunity because I think both parties have betrayed Illinoisans for a long time, and there's just not a representative way forward, I think, to rebuild trust, like, through representation in the elections right now, without major election reform that isn't going to happen without a major independent movement for reform. And that's a nonpartisan city charter, that's civic assemblies, that's ranked choice voting, that's open
Yeah.
primaries, it's all the work that we could do. It's so many opportunities out here for us to really change what these systems are outputting, which is the rage and the disagreement and the distrust. And we could turn all of that into information and move forward as groups of people that want a powerful future together, that could fight back in these, like, very needing
Mhm.
times to build our communities and hold, right? Yet move forward. I think it's time, right? So we're lucky, I think, not to have a city charter. This is, like, where my imagination was born from. I was like, we don't have one? We could do anything. Like, they didn't have AI and data centers and all this nonsense with finance and whatever going on behind the scenes when they wrote those city charters 100 years ago, right? So, but we do. We know. We know where all the mistakes might lie, right? Some of them.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's had their fight every generation and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So my hero, Harold Washington, was dealing with the white city council, and he was an excellent politician, human being, and everything. And I like that show I go on, Ben Joravsky. You know, the myth goes around that he was assassinated, but Ben always told me that like he died because of the racism and stress that he had to deal with. So, but every generation deals with everything, you know what I'm saying? And it's all the same and different, but the same in a lot of ways, right? You know, so today it's AI and data centers. Back then it was different, right? Unions and like stuff like that. So, it's the same, but it's different. But yeah, that's some good talk though. I mean, you got some good talk, so,
That's actually
uh,
so dense. Thank you
yeah,
for
I know. But
very
you know what it is? It's like I always say that when people are brand new to something, they're very compassionate, very passionate about things, right? So you're like relatively like new to all this, you said you started because of the election and all that stuff. I was like that back in 2011. I'm like, man, I want to take down this. I want to take down the world. And that time was Occupy Wall Street, if you remember that time and stuff.
yeah.
So remember Occupy Wall Street, people. Yes, it was Occupy Wall Street and stuff. Everything's connected to everything. So my next question is, what's your take on Chicagoland area veterans and their views on politics? Because I got a lot I got some views myself.
Yeah, I think there's a moment, like I said, I'm really looking for veterans like me. I think there's 1,000 of me out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're one of them. And to say that, to me, with the energy, the bandwidth, and really just the try and stop me, I guess, of it all, of like, hey, like there's a moment now where I need to step up and do something to help change the path we're on, right? So I'm looking for those veterans. I'm looking for bringing us together to work on our own veteran voter guide, which I learned about. They did one in New York this last November, and then just now for the primaries, they did another veteran voter guide there. And I think that's a great thing that veterans in Chicago can, like I said, radically collaborate on. I think we need to start collaborating. There's a lot of powerful veterans in this city, and I think actually a lot of us are very skeptical of each other for all these different movement reasons. And one thing I go back to that our friend Tom taught me about was, I think of this moment whenever I start to feel like I'm offending someone with my independent politics, which I know happens. So I can be too defensive about it too. So I try to work on that and be more radically collaborative and more inviting with veterans, especially because I know we all made the same promise. And even when we disagree, there's something, I don't know, something bigger than us that we made that promise to, right? Okay, well, let's get past this then. If we just agree that we both are going to disagree, but we have a mission, right? I think making that's what makes me want and know and trust that there's way more veterans here than I feel like Chicago has invited into these conversations before. And I think it is the siloing. I think building those relationships will give us the political block and power in this moment that we really need, and that courageous leaders will get power from that. Through our work on election reform, and we'll use that power to really reclaim our democracy through hopefully deliberation and hear all the voices, get some civic assemblies popping up all over the place, ran by trusted veterans. Like that's something you see over and over again. The institutional trust is down all over the friggin' place. Of course it is. And veterans, just like most people, feel disempowered by these systems and have opted out, right? We've opted out of the two-party systems. We've opted out of the election systems because we don't feel like our voice. We feel like gerrymandering is winning. We feel like that we already know most of the elections. We're already won. Like, what are we even looking at for November. A handful of elections. I think you were going to mention the governor election, and like, it's, why don't we believe our vote counts in every single election? Like, why don't we why isn't that the standard? I like really believe veterans should make that the standard. Like, we should absolutely want everybody to believe their vote counts. I think that's the promise I made when I promised to defend the Constitution, and I want people who fit into, the voter laws to feel like I get to go to this election and my vote counts. Like, that's it. Every single person should feel that way in every single election. And I don't think that that's absurd. I think that should be basic. Like, that's a right. That's what right means. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, that's my vision. And I think the veterans that are so organized, so powerful, so thoughtful. And I think when we get defensive, and I do this, we get defensive about those opportunities right now to be radically collaborative, that can get in our way. But I think if we just keep being cute about it, like you and I are, we'll bridge all these gaps. And everyone can come climbing and hanging out, we'll make it fun.
well, I like what you're doing. I mean, I really do. Like, I really, I really appreciate what you do, and I respect that, and it's all good, you know. I just had a, I mean, I used to be involved with the veteran. I still do things, right? You know, the veteran community, but I just have a tough time with the veteran community in general. Their mental, like what we were talking about earlier about that movie, their mentality, their right. They're, a lot of them are very Chicago machine type thinking, right? And very, like, I can go on daily, Rahm Emanuel. Some of them are even Paul Vallis type thinking, right? You know, and it's very tough for me. So that's why I kind of stepped out of the door of not being really part of these organizations. One of the reasons
Yes.
that I personally, me, when I got back into activism again, was the murder of George Floyd. And I was like, well, okay, let me get back into like social justice, my community, trying to get, working with Black veterans, Hispanic, and women veterans too, right? In general, because we've have been discriminated in history of benefits and all that stuff, right? So it's very, very hard for me now these days to really get with the veteran community, as we talked before, like Chicago veterans. That's an example, right? A lot of them think that way, and it's very hard to get through them in that way. So, that's why I have a lot of appreciation for you, and you have a lot of patience for that. You know, so
Yeah,
it's
I think
difficult.
it's important that we have grace not only with each other, but ourselves. Because, like, for me, a year and a half ago, a little, almost 2 years ago, I guess, what was I doing? Like, I had my own shit going on. Like, I wasn't able to believe I could fight back. I wasn't able to believe I could belong in these civic spaces where I still, quite frankly, it's not like I'm invited. I just like show up a lot. And it's like, so, it's about feeling empowered in a big way. And I think creating opportunities for veterans to find me and to hear my story and hear how there's this opportunity for us to do nonpartisan, meaningful. And that's really key, to know that what we're doing is meaningful and everyone is looking for that. That's something that's universal. Like, there are many opportunities to do public activism, this or that, with both parties and civic activism. Both parties would love us veterans to go to their event and be like, yeah, well, I'm a veteran and I pick your party. And they don't want our thoughts, right? They want us to line up and to vet wash they don't want our policy and our agenda. They don't want our veterans agenda in the room. They want our veteran status. And I think that's where you lose a lot of the participation,
Mhm.
is because who wants to be treated like that, right? We want to have our voices matter. We want to have our opinions matter, and we want to feel heard. We want to feel like our vote counts. That's that's so universal. And I think, yeah, the moment right now calls for inviting more people to explore forgiving themselves, forgiving each other, and like coming together to see how we could do things differently for our democracy. And we owe it to each other. We owe it to the oaths we took. I think it's really important to keep remembering that, because it does matter, right? So I went to a couple wars I don't believe in for a couple billionaires I hate. I don't know, but here's my opportunity to make what I promised to do, one of my first major promises of my life, to defend democracy. That's what my heart was doing. That's what I thought in my heart I was doing, was defending democracy. This is the chance. And so I like to remember I wasn't always this open-minded either. And there's other veterans like me who made that promise and need to understand there's an opportunity here, right? So
You're doing now. You're really defending democracy the right way 20 years later, right? And stuff.
that's
So that's an
exactly.
excellent point you make. Excellent point. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And stuff. A lot of the stuff that you're talking about is a book that I'm reading called "The Sum of Us: What Racism Cost Everyone and How We Could Prosper Together" by Heather McGhee. You should read that book. It's really good. It's recent, and a
Thanks.
lot
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff that you talk about is it's in that book and stuff about like division and how they divide us, and it's really really good. But and she's actually from Chicago, and it
Yeah.
does. And she travels around the United States. She just doesn't focus, she goes to Mississippi, to California, and a lot of
What'd you
those.
say? McGee? What was her
Yeah.
last?
Yes, Heather McGhee.
Heather.
Yes. So I would recommend the audience and people to read that book. I'm almost done with it, but a lot of what Holly's talking about is in that book, and I think you would enjoy that book. Just
Yeah.
recommending it and everything. So, okay, let's see here, because we're getting close to the end. Let's see. So what do you think about? Okay, this is what I want to talk about. So why did you think the DSA and the state representative Francisco Hung lost to Crowley, in Milwaukee?
I mean, I'm gonna say the thing that I basically always say, because Democrats are greedy, basically. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like it's not interesting to me. The politics industry is always gonna win,
Yeah.
until we step up grassroots movements to stop this two-party system. This isn't any more interesting than any other race where the most money is gonna win. And I mean, it sucks because you want to believe that the DSA it wouldn't turn into that's two-party politics. That's it. But
Yeah.
yeah. I
No, I
unfortunately don't have a hot take on that. I'm just like,
yeah.
what
No,
can
I
you do?
feel no, I feel you, and some of the things that you talk about, you know what I'm saying? Like, for me, like, I knew Crowley was gonna win that. One, they underserve those polls that they take. They never go into the Black community and talk to the Black community how they feel, right?
Yes.
And another thing, DSA, they don't know how to talk to Black community because our issues are a lot deeper than just affordability and stuff. You don't talk about how like unions, a lot of the unions in the United States and their history are racist. There's a lot of different issues and stuff. And they will never win the Black vote if you don't come and talk to us in the community. You could talk about all that nice stuff, but you actually got to come in our community and tell us why we're going to vote for you. You know what I'm saying? We're not. So that's a lot of things to it, right? And
Mm,
so, and I've done a lot of campaigning in Milwaukee, and those are different stories that I'll tell you some other time and stuff. Some difficulty that I had a little uh, hard times to deal with myself. But it's like, you're not going into community. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
They're not, you know what I'm saying? They ain't feeling you. You know what I mean? Because in history, when it comes to Black people, I'm talking about Black people here, is
Yeah.
that politics don't love us. So
Yeah.
we try to do what's our best interest, right? You know what I'm saying? And then you don't come to our community, but we hear you on social media, but you don't actually come and talk to us. We're not going to feel you. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a
Yes.
lot of things that we deal with, right? It's like, I was talking to another brother who's a veteran, and it's
Yeah.
like a lot of our things, like we deal with so much more like that. We can't pay attention to these things. It was designed like this. We're worried about paying our rent. We're
Yes.
worried about, like where our kids are gonna go to. I mean, like but like it's extra stuff to it, right? Like, is my kid gonna be in danger? Like what kind of job I'm gonna get? Like resources and stuff. And the country was designed for this, right? I mean, so I was listening to a great Black economic person, and the country wasn't it wasn't for Black people, the economy. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's what I always tell the DSA, because DSA have no clue about the Black community in Chicago. I'm talking about Chicago chapter, like
Yeah.
literally and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So that's my point on it. That's how I knew in my heart that Crowley would win this. It was close, but I knew that he was going to get those votes in Milwaukee and stuff like that, right? You could
Yeah.
call him, you could talk about how he's a little more established and whatever. You ain't talking to that community. They don't trust you. You know what I'm saying? Because the history tells you everything, right? So, but they got to learn how to talk and
That's
every
yeah.
place is different too. Like New York is different from Wisconsin. Chicago's different from, Cincinnati, right? So,
Yes, because so when I started doing these charter chats, we started doing them all over the city. And I tried to do just last week my movie screening, one on the north side, one on the south side, one on the west side. And it's something very obvious in Chicago that we don't talk enough about. But all the political events are in the white neighborhoods and like for the white people. And it's very uninviting. And I'll say this as a woman, that was the first thing I noticed. It's also uninviting for women, though. I was like the only woman
yeah.
at 3 happy hours I went to, and I was like, this isn't normal. This isn't normal for this. And I didn't understand I didn't understand why people weren't coming. But it's one of those things that sort of like feeds itself, right? Because then I'm not gonna go. I'm the only woman there. So then like no women are going. And I don't want to invite women because it's no other women there. So it's one of those things, but also just go there and do the events then, right? So that's what we started doing. And I love I went to Pullman. And one other thing that I lived on 35th and King too. So for me, it didn't make, I grew up in Peoria, on the south side of Peoria. So it's like, I was always, for me,
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood, I understood segregation, but I always lived on the side of where poor people lived, really, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah.
Just like I grew up poor, and that's what this is. It's class war, all of it at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
when I look at the political involvement and actually, quite frankly, I really admire everything the mayor's done for the Black communities in civic engagement and civic involvement, especially Black men, and empowering them through positions and opportunities, and the nonprofits. But I have a problem with the nonprofit industry. I have a problem with like every other industry, right? So it's not about race when it comes to politics either. Like, we have to constantly really be intentional and mindful that yes, it can look like a bunch of white people want to control this, but really it's a bunch of rich people, and they all have to be white because that was all set up by those people too. And so it's very it can be tricky because you can't talk about it because you can sound
Yeah.
like me and turn people off or make people feel offended. And I've definitely offended a bunch of people. I am navigating figuring out how do we be post-racial and acknowledge. And we did, I got to attend. I was invited to the People's Assembly that they held on the West Side. Vanessa Stokes is a really powerful organizer on the West Side who's been working on civic assemblies out there, and and the reparations one that I went to in May was so powerful to watch them bring together like 300 or 400 Black folks to like talk about this and like talk about policy, talk about nation changing policy for 4 hours, and then believe at the end that they're these just random neighbors like invited. It wasn't like, oh, you're a part of this big brain organization. It was like, let's invite everyone. Let's teach them about all of this, and then make them know that their opinion about this matters. And that was such a powerful 4 hours to like just witness and be, but also I got to learn as a white person, and remind myself what it feels like to be the only white person in a room where, you know what I mean? And that's such, for me, a reminder of what it feels like to be the only Black person at a civics event, and the only woman at a civics event, and the only, to be othered and not be recognized that you're being othered is in a room where you're supposed to have your voice count, you can feel like you have to think like everyone else to fit, instead of bringing your experience and sharing your experience, which can change everyone else's, right? So it's like, it's just not a fair way to think as a group, to only have, one person. We need like to diversify like one type of person in a room. We need to diversify all of our experiences to get the best outcomes with our policy, with our problem solving, and really just building a culture together of like, we should be nice to each other, because it's not actually like weakness to be nice to each other. It's like necessary community, social contracting, and like, yeah, we could do better than this.
I love it. I love that you go to those places because there's a lot, there's people in our own city that never even been to Brownsville, but they can go all the way to like Germany, but they never been to Brownsville, and it's a beautiful place, and it's and the culture, and it's historic. That's where Black history started, and it's crazy that you can go all these places, but you never been to those kind of that neighborhood or this neighborhood, right? Because of the stigma and the media and all that stuff. So I really appreciate you that when you go to those places, and and as you being as a woman too, knowing how it feels to be left out on a lot of things, and everything. So, and that goes also for white leftist activists too. They do that a lot too, right? It's like, well, why do we always have to do stuff in your area? Why can't you come to our area and do stuff, right? And everything. So it goes a lot. And we could go on and on and on about that. We know, but I really like
Yeah.
that. I had no clue that you did that stuff. And that's awesome.
I think it takes some intentionality, but I think I'm not the only one doing it either. Like, it
No,
takes
I
just,
know.
you know what I mean? I don't want to take like credit, like I invented it either.
No,
My
no,
friend
I
Nate
just
really come up with it. I know Strong Tons has been doing walks all over. There's a guy up here, Vitali, who went to I think he was in Englewood recently, but he was also in Alt Altgeld Park Garden, Altgeld Garden, I
yeah,
think.
I'll go Gardens.
I go
Yeah.
there now. So like, there are
Yeah.
folks trying to bridge those gaps and doing these walking tours. He does amazing walking tours. His name Walking Shy on TikTok. He's very, very good at walking around different neighborhoods. He's an urban planner. He showed up to one of my charter chats where I did a charter chat, actually by my house on King and at the library. So it's all about creating inviting spaces to meet for people to feel like they can come in and think about these things like in big ways that are meaningful, like actually have an effect on it. There's plenty of ways to go out here and gripe to each other and not feel like we have a way to change it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing we need to build that network around, that network of organized folks that like just really need to find a way to change things to know that
Yeah.
they can.
And which is interesting is Elga Gardens it was a place for veterans, for World War II veterans, for housing.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
what fascinated me on his video. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's which is interesting, but that's a whole nother story I can go into, but I'm not gonna go into that rubber. We don't got much time, but I'm gonna close it down with we'll talk about this, and then so besides all this, your civic, all right. This is the bread and butter right here, baby. All right. Who will you be voting for?
I mean,
For the mayor.
too early
Actually.
to say, right? But I will say, whoever falls in love the most with civic assemblies and starts and is like, yes, yes, yes to civic assembly, that's who I'm listening for. Anybody who starts to talk about reform that could mean people feel like their votes count more, like that's who I'm listening for. Reform minded folks that are just looking
Okay.
for reform, not power. That's what I'm listening for.
All right. No, that's
Nice.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know right now, people. You know what I'm saying? I got Brendan, so that's all the way. Because I am not go voting for Alexi. Because let me tell you something
Oh,
about it.
I knew
I
they
could
probably
I cannot. I mean, but that's what how the city is, how they hype him up. The Tribune. This guy, he bad loans. You know what I'm saying? His history. How can you know what I mean? Like, his father's bank, subprime loans and stuff. A lot of people got hurt from that. My mom lost money from the 2000. You know about that. You were a young adult in 2008. So, and he was part of that. And you're gonna, and one thing about Americans, especially we forget history really quick, real quick. And it's like, you want this person, they complain about Brendan Johnson not paying his water bill, but this this guy and his bank, his father's bank, were giving out bad loans to people and stuff,
Mhm.
and got not even a slap in the hand, so it's unbelievable, but it's not surprising. But I
It goes
think,
it goes to those two parties that will do anything to
yeah,
win and
yeah.
not give any concern to governing or values, and they will betray their entire constituency and their values in any way to win if they
Yeah,
can.
it's crazy, but I just was watching 20 Channel 5 news, local news, right? I don't really watch it very much, but like they had the mayoral candidates and stuff, and they just throw like easy questions to, like Alexi and Susan Mendoza. And then if it's Brendan Johnson, they give him like the hardest questions. And of course, I understand he's the mayor and stuff like that, but it's like, hmm. And I have to be honest about it. And it's like, I wonder why. Let's just think about it. It's like, they want a centralist or whatever, or tough on crime. And it's like, well, we have one. His name's Willie Wilson. And he's more right than all those candidates. But I always say, Holly, I wonder why they don't vote for him. It's pretty obvious, right? So it's obvious in our history of our city. So anyways, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was really great to talk to you. I always like talking to you. Your data scientists always blow my mind because you guys shoot like 1,000 words per minute, and it just blows everybody. It blows your head apart and stuff.
Slow me down when you edit this. Like, so it makes me think.
But thank you for coming on the show. You
Yes,
know.
thank you.
Anyways, people, like I said, like stay conscious, stay free, stay double V, and I'll see you next time. And please subscribe.